Welcome, gentle listener. Let the room grow softer. Let the air turn warm and kind. If there is a lamp nearby, dim it until it glows like a small moon. Rest your hands, settle your shoulders, let your breath flow in a rhythm that feels like waves in the quiet night. Slow in, slower out. Tonight I will guide you through a tender path of story and memory. We will wander into Snow White's lore, not only the tale you know, but the deeper roots that feed it. We will explore her origins, her history, and the whispering magic that has followed her across centuries. We will walk through forests that feel alive. We will pass stone halls that remember voices long gone, and we will hear truths waiting in mirrors, apples, and candlelight. This journey will unfold like a dream. One picture will melt into the next. An image of snow on black branches. A window with frost curling at its edges. A hush of birds over a winding path. If you feel sleep arrive, welcome it. There will be no sharp turns here, no sudden endings, only soft transitions where one scene gently gives its hand to another. You can drift at any moment, and the story will keep watch like starlight at your window. If nights like this help you rest, and if you wish for more, remember this simple line and carry it like a warm ember. If you enjoy these bedtime journeys, you can follow and subscribe so you never miss the next dream. Let that be a small promise between us. Now breathe again. Let the world outside wait. Together we will step into a tale older than dusk itself. The forest is listening. The castle lanterns are lit. The first snow has begun to fall. Come, we begin. Chapter 1. Before there were books on shelves, there were fires at night, and circles of listeners, and a single voice shaped the dark into meaning. In that quiet glow, the earliest version of Snow White was a thread of sound passed from mouth to ear, from elder to child, from village to village. Her name changed sometimes. The places changed too. But she was always a girl with a light about her, a kindness that made the world hush and turn toward her. She was white as snow, red as blood, black as ebony. These colors were not just colors. They were a code the old world knew by heart. White for innocence, red for life and love, black for the mystery that stands at the edge of the trees. The forest in these old stories was not a background. It was a living thing. Trees were elders, moss was a soft counsel, and the hush between roots held secrets. In such a place, a heart could break and mend. A person could be lost and then be found. So the story always led her into the woods because the woods were the oldest church, the first school, the oldest cradle. There the mind could grow quiet. There kindness would come forward like a shy animal in dusk. In the old nights, people spoke of queens and kings as if they lived next door. A castle was not far. It was there, on the next hill or behind the fog, and its windows burned like stars. In those windows, envy could bloom. Vanity could speak. And a child with a glow about her could be seen as a mirror one could not bear. So the voice at the fire told of a queen whose heart had the shape of a shadow. Beautiful, frightened, hungry for a mirror that always said yes. But before the queen, before the danger, there was a beginning of gentleness. A mother at a winter window. A wish made while snow fell in quiet feathers. A hope for a child who would carry the purity of winter, the warmth of a red rose, and the strength of ebony wood. This wish is part of the oldest roots of the story. It says the world is hard, and so we wish for a soul that will keep its sweetness and its courage, even when the cold presses in. As the tale passed from night to night, it gathered details like a cloak gathers snowflakes. Some told of hills where 7 small houses tucked against stone, warm as hands. Some told of a mine that sang with jewel tones. Some said the queen asked her mirror 1,000 times and could not bear the single answer. Some said there were 3 trickeries before the apple: a lace pulled too tight, a comb that bit the scalp like a thorn. Then the apple, red as sunset, bright as a promise. Always the apple arrived last. Always it was beautiful. The Grimm brothers would one day write down what the fires had carried for years. Their ink made a path through time, but the story's soul stayed soft and flickering. In their hands the forest still murmured. The dwarfs still laughed and scolded. The queen still whispered orders that sounded like silk and cut like glass. The girls still listened to the little creatures of the woods and found home where others saw only a roof and a broom and a table set for 7. When you hold the story in your heart, you can see how old it is by the way it loves symbols. The mirror is never just a mirror. It is the question we ask the world: am I enough? The apple is never just fruit. It is the beauty that hides the sleeping seed of danger. The crystal coffin is never just a resting place. It is time itself turning so slowly that love can find it. In this way, the tale is not simply told. It is lived, scene by scene, like a dream that teaches without a single sharp sentence. Across snow-bound villages, the tale held warmth. It told children that kindness has the strength of oak. It told elders that jealousy is a winter without fire. It told everyone who listened that the forest holds a path for those who do not know where else to go. And because these truths are simple, they are also deep. They entered the bones of the people who told and heard them. They crossed rivers. They crossed generations. They crossed into the rooms where we rest now and into the quiet nest of your breath. Listen. Under the words, there is another sound. It is the scrape of a chair on a wooden floor. It is the sound of a kettle set to simmer. It is the heartbeat of the story itself, steady and sure. It says, a good heart will find shelter. A kind soul will gather protectors. A cruel heart will be haunted by its own reflection. A single morsel of beauty can hide a test, and love can arrive through branches like morning. The earliest prints of the tale did not lock it in place. They left it free to shift and glow. So you will find versions where the prince stumbles, and the apple dislodges, and she wakes with a surprise gasp. You will find versions where a kiss is a key, soft as a falling petal. You will find versions where the queen's last steps take her into her own winter. You will find versions where the dwarfs have different names, but their good hearts never change. In each, you can hear the same lullaby. Stay kind, even when the world is not. If you feel yourself drifting, let that be part of the lesson too. Rest is not failure. It is the forest's way of closing its hands around you, keeping you warm while you pass from one scene to the next. The story will wait. It has waited for centuries. It can wait for you and greet you when you rise and hold your hand as if nothing has been lost. So the first petals of the tale open. The old window with falling snow. The wish for a child of white, red, and black. A glow in the nursery. A queen who hears the sound of envy like a far-off drum. A mirror made of more than silver. A castle where footsteps echo like cold birds. A forest that leans closer because a good heart has entered its halls. And now the candle by your bed burns low and steady. The first chapter closes like a page turned by the wind. The next opens with the soft ring of a distant bell, the kind the hills wear at dawn, the kind that asks you to listen, not to hurry. Chapter 2. Imagine the kingdom as a tapestry laid at the foot of mountains. There are fields with furrows straight as lullabies. There are rivers that move like blue threads, bright and sure. There is a castle set on a rise, built of stone the color of winter skies. Lanterns glow behind glazed windows. A banner moves like a sigh. The gate is quiet, but voices carry within. Courtiers move slowly, their shoes soft on reed mats, their words careful and careful again. A kind of weather lives in such places. It is made of glances and questions and doors that open only when called by the right name. The castle is not only high walls, it is a feeling. To live there is to sleep beneath ceilings painted with stars. It is to wake to the sound of water in narrow channels, the way palaces hush themselves. It is to pass portraits that watch with patient eyes. It is to be weighed by 1,000 small judgments, and to be lifted by a handful of quiet kindnesses from unseen hands. Somewhere in these stone bones, a girl with a gentle light moves like dawn through shadowed halls. Servants tilt their heads toward her and smile. Guards look away and then back again, as if to ask the day to be kinder. Outside, the kingdom sends its breath into the sky. Markets open with the whisper of fabric unfolded. Bakers turn soft loaves from ovens and set them on the sill to cool. The blacksmith wipes his brow with a cloth hung on a nail darkened by years. Children run with sticks that are swords until a bell tells them it is time to learn the alphabet of their lives: respect, patience, work, rest. In this place, a story like Snow White's is more than entertainment. It is a ladder everyone climbs, one careful rung at a time, toward the kind of life that carries grace, even when it must carry grief. In the court, a mirror may hang where only one woman dares to ask it questions. The room is private. The mirror's frame is carved with vines and small birds, an art that tries to tame a truth. The queen enters on soft steps. She is beautiful. She knows it, and she does not know it. She is strong. She feels fragile. She is loved, perhaps, but she cannot feel it, because fear fills the space where love should rest. She asks the question the way we all do, sometimes out loud, sometimes within. Am I the one? Am I worthy? Am I the brightest candle in this room? The mirror does not lie. It speaks like a bell. It names a girl whose innocent light throws a longer beam. The queen hears her name, and the sound raises a storm in her chest. In a world where one crown must rule, she thinks the light can be owned. She confuses admiration with authority, reflection with worth. The court around her breathes in and holds its breath. Somewhere in the kitchens, a cup is set down a little too hard on a wooden surface. Somewhere in the corridors, a whisper begins, then quiets itself like a mouse dashing under a cupboard. What is a kingdom but a shared dream? The dream in this place is a careful one. To keep the peace, everyone agrees to move slowly. To keep the order, everyone knows where to stand. To keep the story whole, someone must be brave enough to step out of the castle's dream and into another. Snow White will do this. She will walk the path that runs from stone to leaf. She will pass through the gate with her heart beating like a bird cupped in gentle hands. The kingdom will watch her go, unsure. The hills will watch her arrive, certain. The dwarfs' home rests on the outer hem of this kingdom. Their paths do not cross with courtiers often. They carry their days on their backs like packs full of tools. They make small feasts and laugh with big hearts. They swear and then forgive. They dig and then sing. In their home there is a table that always has room for one more bowl. There is a broom that does not mind its work. There are 7 beds, each small as a secret. There is a window that looks into the trees and accepts their constant company. Back in the castle, rules pile upon rules like folded linens, and in this softness, heavy things hide. Duty can mask cruelty. Order can mask fear, a huntsman is called. The request he hears is one no true heart can bear. He carries a knife and a trembling. He leaves with a command pressed upon him, like a cold hand on the back of his neck. He enters the forest, and his breath becomes visible in the shade where ferns keep a summer that never ends. He looks at the girl, and the knife becomes a thing made of cloud. He cannot lift it. He cannot even remember why it matters more than the life before him. The kingdom has borders, but the forest has its own. Where stone ends, green begins. Where rules end, listening begins. In the court, a word is a law. Under the trees, a word is a promise. Snow White hears this difference. She steps deeper. A bird hops 3 paces and turns its head, showing her the way. A rabbit pauses as if offering a prayer of blessing and then darts ahead. The forest changes her pace. It smooths her fear. She still remembers the mirror's shadow, but it no longer sets the weather of her thoughts. The court continues. Letters are written by candle drip and sealed with wax stamped by a signet that has smelled of smoke for generations. Orders are carried to the guardhouse. The steward reminds the cook of the banquet's hour. The queen dresses in silk that could cut if it wished. She stands, and for a moment she feels the weight of what she has done, and then she pushes it away. The mirror rests on the wall and waits. It knows she will come again. It knows the truth does not go dormant. Truth has roots like the forest and a patience that can outlast any painted ceiling. But the kingdom is not only court and command. It is also the eyes of simple people who have learned to measure a ruler's heart by the weather in the streets. They feel a wind change. They speak less in the market. They watch the road that runs to the trees. They hope for news that sounds like morning. Night falls on the castle in a single breath. Lanterns bloom one by one, footsteps quiet. The queen's question floats in the hush like a moth drawn to the only flame it knows. The kingdom sleeps as best it can. In rooms tucked into the outer walls, a guard dreams of a child with a song in her hand. In a narrow room near the kitchens, a maid dreams of washing apples that glowed of their own accord. In the chapel, a candle continues to burn down into a brass dish that knows the weight of 100 years of wax. Somewhere beyond the last field, a small cottage window also lights. The dwarfs return, shoulders sore, faces smudged, voices full of crumbs and laughter. They push the door with their backs, bring the cool evening air in with them, and then stop. Their eyes move together. Their hearts lift together. There is a girl asleep, folded into the quiet, as if she had always belonged. The kingdom and the forest, 2 halves of one world, have met again in this room. The chapter closes with a long, slow bell. The kingdom keeps its shape. The court keeps its questions. The mirror keeps its answer. But the story has crossed a border. What was stone has become leaf. What was command has become care. What was a question has become a path. Chapter 3. Jealousy is a winter that can live even under a summer dress. Envy is a room without windows that a person carries everywhere. The queen's envy grows in the warm dark of her hidden thoughts, fed by her own fear. She returns to the mirror. She asks the question. The answer has not changed. It will not change. It was never meant to change. The mirror is simply a clear lake. It casts back what the world gives it. She feels the coal rise. She chooses it. This is important to understand. Envy is not a spell that tricks us. It is a door we open When we believe love is scarce, the queen opens it. A plan forms like frost spreading over glass. First a ribbon to bind the breath, then a comb to bite, then the apple, perfect as a lie. She thinks beauty can be a trap. She thinks sweetness is a cover for harm. She believes this because she has lived too long in the shape of her fear. The huntsman has already refused the darkest ask. The forest has already accepted the girl. But the queen is a study in persistence. She dresses herself not in silk now, but in the rough disguise of an old peddler. She practices a voice, the kind that bends the air around it. She smiles with her mouth and not with her eyes. She becomes, for a time, what envy makes of anyone, a stranger to herself. The cottage is busy with the hum of new life. Brooms move in patterns that sound like small songs. The table knows the weight of bowls filled to the brim. Windows are open. Fresh air writes the day's page in a clean hand. The dwarves leave for work with sandwiches wrapped and advice offered more than once. Do not open the door. Do not trust the world. Do not be so kind that you forget that not everyone comes with good in their hands. Snow White nods and promises, and her heart listens and also hopes. When the knock comes, it is soft. When the old voice speaks, it is smaller than a cry for help, but larger than a request for company. Snow White goes to the window. She sees a woman bowed by the weight of a basket and the longer weight of years. Compassion moves in her like a tide. She opens the door just a little, the way a person opens the day to let morning in. She takes a ribbon in her hand. She thinks of how lovely it would be to make her dress more neat, more fine, more suited to the care she now gives to a home that is not even hers and yet is. The ribbon wraps. It wraps too tight. Breath leaves her like a startled bird. The floor rises up gently and becomes a bed. The old woman's hands are quick as weeds. Then she is gone, footsteps swallowed by green. Luck arrives in the shape of friends. The dwarfs return before the light has finished its work. They loosen what was bound. They lift. They call her name, and her name hears them. She breathes. The room fills again with what it had lost. You might think a lesson learned will hold forever, but a heart like Snow White's is made of trust and hope. It is what makes her beloved by the world. It is what makes the queen try again. This is the double edge of goodness. It makes the day gentler for everyone, and it asks you to be wise for yourself. The comb comes next, dark and beautiful. The old woman's hand moves as if casting a spell over hair that shines like wet raven feathers. A sting, a sigh, a slow fall. Again the dwarfs return. Again they remove harm with the patience of love. Again her eyes open to the kind faces that have chosen to be her family. The third visit looks like mercy. It looks like a gift brought to a doorstep with a bow of gratitude. An apple is an ordinary miracle. It is a star held in the palm. It is a small sun. It is almost a heart. That is why it can hold a test. The old woman knows this. She halves the fruit and takes a bite from the clean side. Her mouth smiles. Her eyes do not. Snow White looks at the red map of the peel. She sees summer stored inside. She thinks of sweetness. She thinks of sharing. She bites. Silence becomes a soft blanket. The world turns its volume down until only the clock on the mantel keeps time. The apple rolls. The old woman's back straightens. The disguise for a heartbeat falls from her like a shawl. Then the forest takes her away with its usual secrecy. Snow White lies in the light like a prayer set on a window ledge. The dwarfs return. Their voices break, then mend, then turn into a language of careful hands. They cannot wake her. They do not know that the seed of the apple is a small hourglass. They do not know that time itself is part of the enchantment now. They only know love. They build with what they have. They build a resting place worthy of a princess and a friend. They choose crystal because it is clear and does not lie. It will show her as she is. It will keep her safe from the weather and the world's careless touch. They set it among flowers. They keep vigil day after day, until days no longer have edges, only a long glow of devotion. The queen returns to the mirror. She asks. The mirror answers. For the first time, it gives her what she wanted to hear. But the sound is not warm. It does not comfort her. This is another secret the story keeps for those who listen. The victory envy gives you is cold and cannot be held. It does not fill. It evaporates. You reach again and again, and your hands learn only the shape of absence. The forest breathes around the crystal. Seasons turn their pages. Snow kisses the glass and does not melt. Spring lays a soft green shawl upon the ground. Summer brings bees that hum a hymn. Autumn scatters a chorus of leaves. Through it all, her face is peaceful. Not gone. Not here. A pause that holds the shape of a promise. The chapter quiets. The queen's footsteps grow louder in her own head. The dwarf's songs grow lower and slower. The forest watches with the patience of mountains. Somewhere, far away or very near, a horse stamps a hoof as if sensing it will soon be asked to carry a different kind of journey. And you, listening, feel the story's breath beside your own, steady, kind, unafraid of the dark, between words. Chapter 4. The forest has a heart that beats in rings. If you listen, you can hear it in the way the wind runs through pine, in the way mushrooms climb a fallen log like small steps in the way a brook counts stones. Into this patient cathedral, others come and go, hunters, wanderers, messengers. And one day, a prince who rides not to conquer, but to understand what the woods are saying. He does not arrive with horns and banners. He arrives the way a gentle truth does, quietly, without hurry. He follows a path the deer have made by living. He sees light caught in leaves and lets it guide him. He senses grief well before he sees its beautiful shape. Then, through the ferns and the last of the season's flowers, he finds the clearing where a crystal bed holds a sleeping girl, as if the world itself had decided to carry her. He dismounts and stands very still. He knows reverence. He knows that some things must be approached with silence first, and words later, if at all. The dwarfs watch from the edges of the clearing, hearts sore and strong. They do not rush, they do not explain. They see something in his face that looks like recognition, as if he had been walking toward this moment since before he could name a single star. He reads the letters etched on the crystal. He listens to a story told in a handful of careful phrases. He feels in his chest a door open that he did not know was there. He asks, not to own or claim, but to honor. May I pay my respects? May I carry the memory of her? His voice has the gravity of someone who has seen battle and prefers peace. The dwarfs consult the wisdom grief has given them. They say yes. When the crystal is lifted, the world shifts its weight just a little. A pebble moves. A branch lets go of a last drop of rain. A stumble, small, ordinary, like the world catching itself. In some tellings, the jolt lifts the piece of apple from her throat. In some, love arrives like morning and awakens her without a tremor. In either, the same truth unfolds. Time opens its hand and gives her back. Her breath returns as if it had been waiting just beyond her lips, patient and ready. Her eyes open like clouds parting. The forest leans in. The dwarfs do not move. They are afraid that Joy will be startled and run. The prince steps forward one pace, then another, as if walking into a chapel where his whole life has been kept safe until now. She sits. She touches her hair, the glass, the air. She looks at the faces that loved her all through the long pause. She sees the stranger with the eyes that look like a horizon. She does not know his name yet, but her heart knows the grammar of this moment. It says, "Once I was lost. Now I am found, not found by possession, but by recognition. Not claimed, but met." The forest breathes out. The dwarfs begin to sing, and their song is rough and pure, which is the best kind. The prince bows his head, not to a throne, but to a truth older than any crown. "We are here to keep one another awake to what is good," he asks. She answers. Not with a lifetime promised in a single word, but with the simple bravery of a yes, spoken in the soft place between fear and hope. They will ride away. The road will wind. The castle will rise from the hills like a long memory returning. The kingdom will see a procession that feels like a season change. The queen in her high room will hear the sound of joy and not know what it is. She will go to the mirror. She will ask. The mirror will be a lake again. It will say a name she tried to bury beneath ice. The ice will break. A path will open for her too, though she will not take it. You may rest now if your eyes are heavy. The story has reached a bright clearing. Nothing is rushing you forward. The ending can wait at the edge of the wood while you sleep under a ceiling of branch and star. If you stay awake, we will walk a little further, past the gate where bells are tied with ribbons, past the long table where bread is set down with hands that have finally stopped trembling. We will walk to the place where ever after does not mean perfect, but means faithful. And for now, the night holds all of it in a calm, steady palm. The crystal is empty because its purpose is complete. The forest keeps its watch because that is what it was born to do. The castle lights its windows because people inside have chosen, again, to hope. The mirror waits on its hook, quiet, finally learning that truth does not bend for anyone, not even a queen. Chapter 5. The cottage rests like a warm heartbeat beneath the slope, a small square of lamplight stitched into the green fabric of the hills, and within its wooden ribs the rhythm of simple goodness keeps time for the world. Here the floor remembers the weight of boots and the lightness of bare feet. The table remembers the ring of bowls and the soft hush of folded bread. The broom remembers every corner where dust gathers like quiet thoughts. 7 beds line the wall, each a prayer sewn to a blanket, each a different size of laughter, each with a pillow shaped by the same repeating wish. May the day return us all safely home. At dawn, they rise with the certainty of people who know their work and respect it. Belts buckle. Tools clink like little bells. Sandwiches wait wrapped in cloth that smells faintly of sunlight. A jug of water gleams with the calm of the stream that filled it. They speak in the way good friends do. Quick jokes, small reminders, grumbles that end in smiles. The hills take their footsteps and return them as echoes, as if answering in a language of stone and root. We hear you. We are with you. They descend to the mine with the humility of those who enter a cathedral carved by the earth itself. Lamps bloom along the braces. Rails sing under iron wheels. The first strike rings out and becomes many more, a measured percussion that turns hours into a steady braid. In the chambers, the rock opens like a quiet hand, offering what it has hidden, and Jules look back with the steady gaze of stars. Not riches for a throne, not trophies for fame. Just small lights, patient and exact, waiting for the one who understands how to hold them without forgetting where they came from. In the evenings, the cottage becomes a school of belonging. Hands wash. Boots are set in a neat row. The table gathers everyone as if it were a circle drawn by kindness alone. A kettle sighs its old comforting song. Steam rises as if writing the same word again and again in the language of air, home. Stories begin without announcement and end without argument. The day is kneaded into memory. Mistakes are shaped into lessons and left to rest. There is music sometimes, no instrument, but the voice, worn smooth by use and made strong by harmony, that knows how to bend and never break. Since the day she crossed the threshold, Snow White has been both student and teacher here. She learns the alphabet of chores that make a house a haven, the rhythm of sweeping, the grace of setting plates with two hands, the art of seeing what needs doing and doing it without being asked. She teaches without trying, by letting gentleness lead the way, by listening with her whole face, by turning small tasks into blessings. Rooms brighten when she enters, not because the shutters are open wider, but because her patience becomes a bowl everyone can eat from. Their names, whether spoken or kept within as warm nicknames that change with the weather, are less important than their temperaments. 7 shapes of care, 7 ways the world can be met. One is precise as a ruler, measuring before he lifts. One is quick with a joke that releases a day's tension like a knot undone. One keeps a ledger in his head of seeds saved, nails needed, bread baked, and kindness given. One is stubborn in the exact way that keeps roofs on through winter. One is quiet and sees what others miss. The bug at the windowsill, the missing button, the bird that returns at the same hour every afternoon. One angers fast and forgives faster. One moves slowly, and because he moves slowly, he notices how everything fits together. Together they build a circle around her that is not a wall, but a windbreak. Advice is their fence, repeated and repainted. Warnings are the gate, difficult to open from the wrong side. The pact is simple. We keep watch for one another. We return what we borrow. We speak truth, even when it is small and ordinary. The cottage itself agrees, floorboards answering with small creaks like nods, pots shining their copper faces, door latches settling with a contented click. The mine and the cottage make a pair of lungs. In the morning, the breath goes out. Work, risk, depth, the old darkness that is not evil but mystery. In the evening, the breath comes in. Warmth, food, talk. A blanket folded along its seam, the safety of a lamp turned low. Snow White moves between these places as if remembering a dance she learned before she was born. Step into the world. Do what is needed. Step back into shelter. Honor the rest that makes the next day possible. The hills keep their counsel. They have seen caravans of kings pass and leave only wheel ruts. They have seen storms arrive like sudden decisions and leave like long apologies. They have seen people try to take more than they can carry and learn the old mathematics of balance. They approve of the cottage, of the mine, of the way 7 and 1 became 8, not by erasing differences, but by weaving them. If you stood on the ridge at dusk and looked down, you would see one square of light gathering moths, and you would understand why the stars are patient, because below them, some places practice their same patience so faithfully. In such a life, danger cannot enter easily. It must disguise itself as necessity or kindness. The queen knows this and tailors her plots to the seams of the day. Yet even in those trials, the truth of the cottage persists. A community that returns on time, checks the latch, counts the bowls, listens for one another's footsteps, and believes down to the bone that care is an action and not a feeling. The greatest treasure mined here is not gem or ore, but a habit of love that does not announce itself and therefore never needs to be defended. When sleep comes to this room, it comes like a procession. The fire lowers itself. The last mug is turned upside down to dry. A chair is pushed in with a gentle hand. Boots rest, soaked leather breathing out its tiredness. Breaths lengthen in a line until it sounds as if the whole cottage is one creature, dreaming calmly, unafraid. If you listen closely, you can hear the mine above ground, the rich seam of loyalty, the glitter of shared burdens, the steady beams of trust, holding the roof in place without a single nail. Chapter 6. An apple lives at the crossroads of hunger and wonder. It is as simple as lunch and as enchanted as a star fallen into your hand. Its skin is a red map, its flesh a quiet moon, its seeds a pocketful of night. It grows where branches learn how to balance sweetness and shade. It asks nothing more than a palm to hold it, and a mouth to turn it back into energy and delight. It is the most ordinary magic the world makes every year, and because it is ordinary, it is powerful in a way that can be bent toward good or harm by the intent that carries it. Stories have always known this. In gardens older than memory, apples glowed as if remembering the sun even after dusk. In northern myths, apples promised vigor as if time itself could be chewed and swallowed. The bite, a small agreement with the future. In orchards where ladders leaned and hands reached carefully between leaves, the fruit taught patience to children who waited one more week for the right blush, the right snap, the right scent that says now. The apple is a teacher when we are ready to listen, and a test when we forget to. The queen does not understand the apple's true lesson. She chooses the test and calls it a gift. She decorates the trap with beauty because she is fluent in surfaces and nearly speechless in the language of depths. The fruit she offers gleams. It suggests abundance while hiding subtraction. It advertises summer while delivering winter. It lies without speaking by borrowing the reputation of a good thing and bending it until good becomes a costume for harm. But the apple is not to blame. This is important in a world that will always offer us objects and ask us to decide their meaning by the way we use them. A mirror can be a friend or a jailer. A ribbon can be adornment or a vice. A comb can be comfort or a bite. The apple can be nourishment or a key turned in the lock of sleep. The objects wait patiently. People choose. On a table in the cottage, a bowl of apples might rest with the humility of tools. Snow White's hand might hover, not out of greed, but out of gratitude for how a day's labor can be answered by something so immediate and bright. A knife might split the fruit with the soft click of blade on board, revealing crescent moons within. The sweetness might rise, filling the room with a fragrance that reminds everyone present of afternoons spent under branches, of the ladder's wobble, of a skirt stained by grass, of sun warm on the nape of the neck. Beauty in such a moment is trustworthy because it has roots. The queen's apple tries to imitate that trust while cutting it away from its source. It is a counterfeit sunrise. The lesson it brings, once learned, echoes past the cottage walls and into any life that must decide between what looks right and what is right. The apple teaches discernment by breaking a heart and then letting time and love mend it. In this way, even a poisoned thing is not the last word. The last word belongs to what heals. The hush that follows the bite is not only tragedy, it is also a mirror held up to a community. What will they do in the face of harm? Will they reduce a life to its usefulness? Will they turn away to hurry through their own chores? Or will they risk the long work of vigil, the patient craft of honoring what seems pause beyond retrieval. The dwarfs choose the long work. They choose to love without reward, which is the most durable spell available to mortals. The crystal coffin enters the story because transparency is part of the remedy. Nothing is hidden. Grief is not tucked in a back room. Sleep is kept where the sun can see it, and the moon can bless it, and the seasons can keep the calendar for it. The apple rests outside in wind and rain, back to seed and soil and the quiet correction of the earth. Time begins its soft labor, the only kind that can unwrap a curse without tearing the fabric that lies beneath. If you look closely at the apple in this tale, you may notice a familiarity with your own days. How many times has a bright thing asked you to trust it quickly? How many times has sweetness introduced the sleep you did not intend to enter? How many times has nourishment waited patiently beside you while you were distracted by something that knew how to catch the light with a greater drama? The apple invites these questions without shame. It knows you will learn by living. It knows you will come back to the orchard for the right kind of red. And so, as the story moves forward, the fruit remains at the center without needing to be held in anyone's hand. It is part of the field guide to being human that fairy tales carry inside their folded maps. Beware the gift that demands you stop thinking. Beware the glitter that does not point to a sun. Trust the ordinary miracle that repeats each year and asks only presents in return. Take, eat, be strengthened, and know that even misused beauty can be met by steady love and rethreaded into the fabric of a life, one long patient stitch at a time. Chapter 7. Sleep can be a physician when it is chosen, and a winter when it is forced. In this clearing, it becomes a third thing, a vow. The crystal is set upon a base that remembers the heft of beams raised by careful hands. Its corners are polished until the sky moves through them. The body inside is not displayed but protected, not presented but preserved. Flowers ring the site because life insists on framing pause with color. The dwarves do not post guards. They become them by presence alone, each taking a turn that never feels like a burden because love has its own economy. Days unspool like the thread from a patient wheel. Morning arrives with its usual chores that now feel liturgical. A path is swept. A lantern is trimmed. A cup of water is carried from stream to stone and placed as if for a guest who might wake and ask for it. The dwarfs speak less, but when they speak, the sentences are carved clean as fence rails. Jokes still happen. Laughter still visits. Sorrow does not cancel joy. It slows it down until it can be tasted fully. Animals learn the new map of the clearing. Birds alight on the coffin's rim and look in with the frank curiosity of creatures who do not fear what they understand. Deer step closer than they should, hooves careful as fingertips. A fox sits like a small fire at the edge of the shade and squints as if reading the day's news. Even the bees adjust their flight lines, passing respectfully above, collecting sweetness, distributing life, unconcerned with tragedy because they, more than most, know that the hive endures by attention to tiny tasks. Through winter, snow writes its soft, white sentence repeatedly across the glass, and the sentence is always the same. Wait. Through spring, rain polishes the surface until the world looks at itself and sees, for once, something more than a mask. Through summer, heat climbs, and the air smells of pine pitch and memory and the faint ghost of apples. Through autumn, leaves try on the colors of courage, commit to the fall, and trust the ground to receive them without judgment. Vigil is a skill, and the dwarfs master it. They measure time not only by the sun, but by the rhythms inside them. The moment when fatigue arrives and is greeted like a traveler. The moment when the throat tightens and is soothed by a sip and a song. The moment when hope feels like a bird that might not return and then returns, circling once, twice, settling exactly where it always has because hope prefers those who keep watch without demanding results. Travelers pass and lower their voices without being told. Some leave small offerings, a ribbon, a polished stone, a loaf wrapped against crumbs. None of it is necessary. All of it matters. The clearing becomes a chapter in the region's story, a place to point to when teaching children the shape of devotion. Teachers bring students and say, "Here, look. This is what it means to keep faith with a person who cannot repay you." Old men sit and hum the tunes their mothers sang. Young couples stand at a distance and learn what love might be if the page turned and their names were written here. The queen cannot understand this language. She does not visit because victory has made her fearful of the quiet she would find. She keeps to hallways where the air is measured and the mirrors are dumb unless spoken to. Her sleep is full of scenes she tries to outrun when morning arrives. Her meals taste like their plates. The silk that once felt like water now rustles like paper. She has won something that refuses to be held. This new knowledge brushes her wrist like a moth in the dark and will not land. The vigil continues. One by one, the dwarfs learn that grief adds not only weight, but strength. The way a pack carried daily eventually becomes a part of the body's understanding of balance. They do not become hard, they become exact. They do not become bitter, they become discerning. They plant a tree just beyond the ring of flowers. It grows slowly, stubbornly, as if making a point. Some things must take their time or they are not themselves. When the prince finally enters this picture, he does not interrupt the vigil. He is received into it. But even before he arrives, the clearing resolves into a promise kept. The crystal shines without glare. The flowers root their roots around the stones. The animals know where to stand. The dwarfs, not knowing they are nearing the end of this chapter, repeat their habits with a reverence that proves habits can be songs if you sing them with your whole life. And in the stillest hour, when even the water in the creek sounds like breath, a truth rises so quietly it could be mistaken for dew. What we love beyond hope changes us into the kind of people who can receive miracles without grabbing at them. The clearing waits, and because it has learned how, waiting turns into welcoming as naturally as night yields to the edge of dawn. Chapter 8. He does not come to take, he comes to understand, and in this alone the world shifts, because understanding is the hinge on which every good arrival turns. The prince's horse feels it first, the looseness of the reins, the lack of spur, the prayer in the rider's spine. They move like a sentence searching for its subject and finding it in light, in glass, in a face the forest has guarded the way a chapel keeps its single candle. He steps down, and all the small lives pause as if to make room. He reads the name carved with steady hands. He looks at the flowers and understands the calendar they have kept. He sees the dwarfs and recognizes not characters from songs, but men who have labored at the exact intersection where love meets time. He bows to them as if bowing to elders because in this clearing they are. The dwarf who speaks does so without ceremony. Words are scarce during vigil and precious when spent. He tells the story as one might tell the weather, which is to say precisely, without drama, without flinch. The prince receives it as one receives a map that reveals the road one has been traveling all along. He does not ask for permission to change anything. He asks instead to share the burden of remembering. In this request, he becomes kin. What happens next has been told many ways, and in all of them, the same doorway opens. whether by jolt or by kiss, whether by accident or intention, whether by the slip of a bearer's boot or the soft meeting of two fates at the right angle to one another, the fruit gives up its last hold, the sleep exhales, and a breath crosses the boundary it has respected for so long. The moment does not shout. It widens. It is not a trumpet blast. It is a tide turning with the moon's consent. She awakens into a world that has been loving her in her absence, and this, more than any single gesture, is what steadies her. The glass no longer separates. Air holds her without breaking. Color returns, the particular green of the moss, the blue that shadow keeps for itself, the brown that promises warmth in wood. She sees the dwarves not as saviors, but as constants. She sees the prince not as a rescuer, but as someone who arrived fluent in reverence. The dwarfs do not cheer. Their joy is larger than noise. They step forward as one body, and then as seven, each in his way, each offering what he always has: the precise comfort, the quick joke, the counted inventory of needs, the stubborn insistence that the path be clear of stones, the keen glance that catches a loose thread and ties it, the quick temper already melting, the slow hand steadying the elbow as she stands. The forest breathes again as if the entire clearing had been holding air for this one release. The prince offers his arm not as a claim but as a bridge, and she accepts not as surrender but as agreement. The bees continue their routes because the world does not pause all at once. It folds the extraordinary into the ordinary with a grace we should study. The glass is closed and will later be carried to a place where light is honored. The flowers are not removed. They are left to finish their songs. The path opens, not as a parade route, but as a road worn honest by use. Word travels ahead without messengers. The hills tell the fields, and the fields tell the lanes, and the lanes tell the market, and the market tells the castle walls by the way people look up from their work with tears in their eyes and do not know why. By the time the procession crosses the moat, the air is full of a feeling the queen has not allowed to live in her rooms for a long time: relief. She hears it, and, for a fraction of a heartbeat, remembers the first wish spoken by a winter window. The memory tries to soften her. She refuses. The mirror is waiting. The answer has changed, and in its changing, the queen is handed a chance she does not take. Redemption, like dawn, arrives every day. It cannot force anyone to accept its light. Snow White enters the castle, not as a triumph, but as a homecoming for everyone present who has longed, at least once, for a gentler order. Servants stand a little taller because they are seen. Guards hold their spears as if holding walking sticks, as if when their watch ends they might stroll to the river to listen to it speak. The prince does not rush her through. He matches her pace. Together they move as if remembering a choreography, set to the tempo of gratitude. A wedding happens, yes, but let the bells ring softly in this telling. Let the feasting be measured and the music humble enough to let conversation be heard. Let the vows be simple as bread. Let the garments be beautiful because hands made them, not because pride demanded them. Let the queen's absence be felt, but not dwelt upon. Let the air turn sweet with the knowledge that the kingdom has bent somehow toward mercy without needing to announce it on every corner. And night gathers on the new life like dew, and windows fill with warm rectangles. In a high room now empty, a mirror hangs and learns at last the discipline of silence. In the stable, a horse stamps and sighs and lowers into straw that carries the day's story in the smell of hay and sweat and something like satisfaction. In the cottage far away, a table is set for 8 for the first time, and then, with the gentlest of sadnesses and the deepest of reliefs, reset for 7. Because love makes room and also knows when to return a seat to the quiet that keeps it polished. The chapter closes on a balcony where night is not a threat, but a blanket. The couple stands without speaking because some unions are best honored by sharing a view. The stars above are the same stars that watched a window wish, a forest wait, a cottage learn, a clearing keep faith. They approve not with spectacle, but with continuity. The world, having practiced patience, is ready again for ordinary days. And you, listening in the soft dark, feel how endings in such stories are not stops, but turns. Gentle curves in a road that will carry you into sleep whenever you are ready to be carried. Chapter 9. Ever after arrives quietly, like dew choosing leaves in the first light, and a kingdom learns to speak in softer tones. The great hall fills not with thunder, but with the human murmur of relief finding its breath. Candles are set in tall iron candelabra, and their flames curve like patient spindles, spinning light into thread that binds faces into one warm tapestry. Musicians tune with the humility of people who know that music is bread as much as it is celebration. Bakers carry loaves that still remember the oven. The long tables, polished by generations of sleeves, hold bowls that steam like small, kind weather. Nothing is rushed. Everything arrives in the rhythm of gratitude. A marriage changes rooms before it changes laws. Hallways that once held the brittle echo of fear learn to hold laughter that walks without looking over its shoulder. Doors that used to close too quickly now linger a heartbeat, as if pleased to share the same air from one space to the next. Servants look one another in the eyes, finding a new permission there. Guards discover that their armor can be worn like responsibility instead of pride. The castle breathes out a long breath that did not know it was holding, and the windows haze with the warmth of it. Snow White carries into her role the simplest wisdom of the cottage, to notice what needs doing and do it with 2 hands and a gentle face. A palace is only a larger home in need of the same small graces. Floors are walked with intent, not pomp. Kitchens are visited at dawn, not to surprise, but to thank. Names are learned and used. Complaints are received as seeds that can be planted into better practice. The pantry is not a place for secrets. It becomes a ledger where need is written plainly and matched with supply. The night fires are checked with the same care once given to a single hearth, not to rule but to keep, not to command but to tend. The prince moves beside her in the unhurried gait of a man who understands that authority is a lantern, not a torch. He listens as if listening were jurisdiction, and it is. When he speaks, the room leans in, not from fear, but because clarity has always been a rare and welcome guest. Together they begin reforms that sound less like decrees and more like lullabies rewritten for daylight. Grain stores open methodically before winter bites, riverbanks reinforced by hands paid fair, a calendar of markets adjusted to follow the season's honest clock. Apprenticeships offered to those who learn by doing, rest days honored as the soil of endurance. Forgiveness is not a proclamation in a square. It is a daily choreography among imperfect people. The huntsman is invited to speak, and when he does, his words are spare and exact. He is thanked without spectacle, and the thanks lands where thanks should land, on the quiet discipline of a conscience that held. Messengers carry letters not stamped with threat, but with inquiry. Distant hamlets answer, and in answering become less distant. Even the old stubborn arguments of boundary stones are approached with chairs and maps, and a pot of tea that empties and is filled again until tempers empty too. The queen is a shadow that does not vanish when light returns. She is a knot that takes time to loosen. Accounts vary as stories allow and life demands. In one telling, she leaves under a hood of her own choosing, slipping through a postern gate at an hour when even owls hesitate. In another, she is asked to face the harm she set in motion, and she does so with the brittle poise of someone who has mistaken a reflection for a soul. In yet another, she is offered a room at the far end of the castle, with one window and a mirror turned to the wall, and there, away from the chorus of adoration she once demanded, she begins slowly to learn the grammar of humility. Whichever path your heart chooses for her, the kingdom keeps two truths in hand: justice that has a spine, and mercy that has eyes. The mirror remains because a kingdom must never pretend it has no appetite for praise. It is taken down with ceremony and carried like a sleeping animal. Its frame, once ivy and birds and vanity made into ornament, is stripped to its wood, sanded until it is bare enough to be honest. Rather than breaking the glass, they cover it with a velvet cloth the color of evening and set it in the archives where objects that once ruled are taught to rest. The cloth gathers dust like a calendar of quiet days, and in that calendar a lesson is kept. Truth is not a service to be summoned. It is a weather to be lived within. The forest is welcomed as a sibling realm rather than a rival. Boundaries are walked with the respect farmers give to hedgerows that keep the wind from bruising the wheat. A day is set aside in each month when the court eats outdoors, not as a performance, but as a reintroduction to the source of everything plated on silver. Children are taught the names of trees, not as lists, but as relationships. Trails are mended by volunteers who learn that mending a trail teaches one how to speak more kindly at supper. The dwarfs are not forgotten companions of a crisis. They are counselors of the ordinary. Invitations arrive at their cottage with the modesty of linen tied with twine. They decline often because work keeps the world upright, but when they accept, the castle rearranges itself to their scale. Benches are lowered. Maps are unrolled on floors. Plans are argued in chorus and then settled by common sense. A small, sturdy cart is commissioned to carry ore to the city, where it becomes tools that turn earth, mend roofs, and carve beams. Fair prices are set and held. The mine's song, once only echo and pick, now carries into the city as an ethic. A garden is planted inside the walls, not merely for show, but for food and apprenticeship. The beds follow the soft geometry of a dream remembered in the morning. Curves where corners used to collect dust. Paths laid wide enough for two to walk side by side. Fruit trees are chosen for staggered ripening so that patience is taught by harvest itself. A small kitchen is attached where stews are practiced until they taste like welcome. And the door of that kitchen is the kind of door people find without looking when they are tired, poor, or shamed. No one leaves hungry. More importantly, no one leaves unnamed. Festivals are pared down to their meaning and then strengthened until they can hold a year in place. A lantern night is kept, when windows cradle little galaxies and the streets look like a sky that has fallen to earth to walk among its own stars. A forest day follows, a quiet procession, without speeches, where people carry buckets of water and seed in their pockets and return home with more quiet than they arrived with. Marriages are witnessed as a community's promise to keep watch, not as a spectacle's opportunity for gossip. Deaths are marked with music soft enough for tears to find it and follow. Ever after is not smooth. It is attentive. There are droughts measured in cracked cups and long glances toward sky. There are illnesses that pass through the village like a gray scarf, and then are pulled away by nurses whose hands smell of soap and sleep. There are disputes that return like herds to good grass, and each time they return, they eat a little less, until one day the grass grows over the old argument, and both are better for it. There are babies born into rooms that remember worse years and are grateful this is not one of them. There are elders who sit in chairs by windows and narrate the weather as if they have been given a small commission from the clouds. Snow White walks through all of this with the posture of someone who believes that eye contact is a kind of shelter. She visits the school and asks what the children are learning, then listens as a teacher, not a queen, while a child explains the life cycle of a frog with such seriousness that an entire bench of officials recalibrates their sense of importance. She steps into workshops and learns how fear sits in a body when a tool is poorly made, and how confidence is a sound the right tool teaches your hand to recognize. She speaks to merchants about stretch and fairness, not in the shrill notes of chastisement, but in the calm intervals of a scale that allows a song to exist. On a summer evening, she returns to the cottage where everything began again. The path remembers her feet. The window remembers her face. The table catches the same light it has always caught, and holds it for her the way old friends hold old stories. There is soup, and it tastes of the exact midpoint between effort and ease. There is laughter that remembers its own history. There is a bed turned down without fuss. In the morning, she helps sweep because it is still one of the surest ways to love a room. The crystal coffin stands in a chapel made of glass and shadow just inside the forest lip. It is empty as it should be, and it is kept as it must be. Children are brought there to learn the difference between relic and reminder. They place their hands on the cool surface and feel how grateful the day is to be present tense. Someone leaves a single apple on the step each week. Someone else carries it away to the orchard and returns it to the slow arithmetic of soil. The ritual never earns applause, which is how you know it is working. At night, the castle's highest balcony receives two figures who have not forgotten how far sound can travel over water. They speak lightly and little, not out of secrecy, but out of the understanding that some happinesses are braided more tightly by silence. The town's lamps scatter their small constellations. The river writes its long, cursive sentence and does not stop. Owls interrogate the dark and are answered. A clock somewhere chooses kindness and loses count so that people can sleep a little longer. Ever after does not arrive and end. It arrives and begins. It is a practice, a liturgy, a market list written in a steady hand. It is the habit of asking each morning where your light ought to be spent, and then spending it. It is the courage to hold the mirror turned inward without letting it grow into a wall. It is the patience to walk the same paths until they deepen into roads that even the weary can trust. The kingdom learns this, and in learning it, becomes the sort of place that can shelter a tale and the listeners who carry it into their own evenings. And you, resting within this chapter, receive what the story has been saying beneath every scene. The point of a happy ending is not happiness. It is the continuation of care. The point of a wedding is not a crown. It is two hands that remember how to lift together. The point of forgiveness is not forgetting. It is living forward without the weight that makes our steps stumble. Ever after is only ever now, lived faithfully, tended gently, kept like a garden that expects you back tomorrow. Chapter 10. Stories have legs longer than history and hearts older than calendars. Snow White's tale learns to walk from fire ring to fire ring, from winter bench to summer threshold, long before ink learns its shape on paper. In the earliest evenings, a single voice carries the weight and lightness of the world. The teller counts not pages but faces, measures not chapters but breaths, edits not for plot, but for the precise temperature of the room. A child leans against a parent's side, and plots are knitted along with socks. A grandfather pauses for emphasis, and the pause becomes a door that opens into a clearing lit by crystal. In those first centuries, the tale moves like seed carried by apron and boot sole. It enters markets wrapped in gossip and leaves in bread baskets that smell of caraway and news. A traveler repeats it in a dialect that tucks its consonants into pockets and lets its vowels ride the air like swallows. A shepherd rephrases the forest so that it resembles the hill he knows best, and thus an entire valley begins to think of spruce when it hears the word tree. A midwife adds the exact tilt of the moon on the night after the apple's bite, and for 3 generations her town insists that the moon must be drawn that way when the scene is carved in wood. Eventually, hands blackened by press and dye lift the tale into the permanence of print. The page does not harden the story, it dresses it for a journey through time. Margins become new fields where scholars will sow annotations, and children will draw small birds in pencil when the sermon of the words grows too long. Woodcuts teach eyes a new alphabet of shadow and line. A crown can be suggested with 3 marks. A mirror with a rectangle that somehow looks deeper than paper. An apple with a circle that seems to shine, though no pigment could manufacture such a trick. The first readers meet the dwarfs in black and white and still find color because imagination never sought permission from ink. Collectors arrive with satchels and boots. They walk the roads between dialects the way bees fly between fields, gathering pollen one blossom at a time. They listen at doorways that smell of supper and smoke. They write not to imprison, but to preserve. And in their notebooks, the tale learns to hold its breath for longer than a night. Its bones are noticed, the 3-fold tests, the passage from stone to leaf, the mirror as a character rather than furniture, the brave, not bright violence that envy asks others to do on its behalf, the pause in glass, the re-entering of time. The collectors argue and arrange and publish and revise, and the tale steps into schools, onto shelves, into pockets, onto nightstands, into the hands of people who now live in towns big enough to forget the shape of the local forest, and so need the story's map more than ever. Illustrators come with brushes that know how to turn silence into light. They wash the sky with pigments that move like thought. They paint the queen's room with blues that whisper of secrets spoken to objects. They give the dwarfs boots that are worn in believable places, and tools that look as if they could strike and sing. They render Snow White's face without perfection, which is how you know they loved her, because loving someone means allowing them to keep their humanity even at the edge of myth. Children open these books and enter rooms where the windows seem just big enough to step through. Composers hear the story in instruments before they hear it in words. A bassoon becomes a forest with depth enough for lost things to find themselves. A flute draws birds that know how to land on windowsills without breaking the scene. Cellos enter when grief needs a floor. Triangles mark the glance of light on glass. Harps bring the apple forward with the puzzling honesty of a temptation that looks like a blessing. Choruses carry the vigil, and when the moment of waking arrives, the music does not burst. It lifts and lifts until listeners realize they are standing in their chairs because hope has a way of moving the body before the mind agrees. Stages take the tale and lay boards down where paths once ran. Actors climb into the shapes of these people, the way a river climbs into its spring flood, filling, enlarging, discovering what the banks can hold. Costumes accommodate work more than wealth. A comb gleams with a malice so quiet it seems ashamed of itself. The apple descends from the flies like a small red moon, and nobody laughs because props, when rightly used, turn into sacraments. Audiences leave the theater and find the street different, only because they themselves are carrying a slightly altered posture. It is enough. It is always enough. One day, a studio will grind light and sound into a new kind of tapestry and hang it across a wall big enough for a town to sit beneath. Painters will learn to move in teams, and their colors will discover motion. A whistle will become a language. A deer's blink will become a ministry. An entire country will file into dark rooms and remember how to be children under blankets, together. Songs will attach themselves to the tale not as garnishes but as spines, so that decades later a single phrase hummed in a kitchen will open a path in the mind to a wood full of lantern eyes and a cottage learning to set 8 bowls on a table with reverence. This retelling will teach a century how to dream in public. Translations arrive with their own weather. In each language, white, red, and black mean the same things and different things at once, and this is not a contradiction. It is evidence that symbols are citizens of many homelands. In one tongue, the word for apple is cousin to the word for evil, and the story leans in that direction until a later translator leans it gently back. In another, the forest carries a kindness the original did not measure, and in that kindness the huntsman finds a new sentence to say to himself while he lowers the knife forever. In every case, the essence survives because it resides not in plot points, but in the muscles that move them. Scholars will sift this tale the way miners sift ore, separating glint from gravel, and sometimes mistaking one for the other because scholarship is a human art too. They will write about thresholds and initiations, about the triple hazards that mark the passage from one age to the next, about mirrors as technologies of selfhood, and apples as domesticated stars. They will map how the queen's envy mirrors a culture's, how the dwarf's domestic competence embarrasses the courts, how the prince's reverence undoes the habit of conquest. Their footnotes will be trails others can follow when the weather is bad and the forest too wet for walking. Meanwhile, the story keeps working at its day job. Parents whisper it at bedsides with the skill of people who have folded a fitted sheet so many times they could do it in the dark. Librarians press it into hands that are small and cold and leaving without adults. Teachers let it stand in a lineup of tales and ask the class to notice the ways each story says the same thing differently and different things the same. Therapists leave it on the coffee table because metaphors often arrive early for their appointments. Pastors and poets and carpenters quote it without realizing because it has become part of the language's marrow. Modern retellings will do what retellings should do. Ask new questions without discarding old answers. Some will set the forest in a city and discover that alleys can be as full of birds as branches. Some will put the mirror in a pocket and call it a device. The device will still say the same dangerous thing, and people will still believe it some days. Some will give the dwarfs other names, hackers, neighbors, aunties, crew, and they will remain what they have always been. The common miracle of companionship that refuses to be passive. Some will ask the queen to tell her own story, and in the asking, remind us that even villains were small once and learned the wrong lesson beautifully. The tale persists because it is not about a princess being saved. It is about a community remembering how to keep one another awake to what is good. It persists because it teaches that work done with care changes the climate of a room. It persists because it admits that beauty can be mistaken for truth, and then gently shows how to unlink them without growing cruel. It persists because it respects sleep without confusing it for death, and respects waking without confusing it for conquest. It persists because it sets within us a geography, a castle of responsibility, a forest of becoming, a cottage of belonging, a clearing of pause, that we can navigate when our own lives forget the map. In the Museum of Evenings, where stories are kept alive, Snow White's case is always smudged by the fingerprints of visitors who could not help but lean closer. Docents wipe the glass, not because they want to erase those prints, but because they want to make space for more. The apple carved in jade beside the text label looks cool in summer and warm in winter because jade is obedient to the hand that holds it. A small plaque near the mirror's covered frame reads, "Caution. Your reflection may still be listening. Children ask if they can lift the velvet. The answer is no, and that no teaches them something for which there is no curriculum." And finally, the story arrives again in rooms like yours, at hours like this, where the lamp does its one small job and the blanket holds its quiet corner of the world. It comes without banging on the door. It steps in and sits and waits for your breathing to find the shore it is sailing toward. It does not insist you remember any of it in the morning. It asks only to keep you companion as you cross from this side of the night to the other. It is not jealous if you sleep. It is pleased. It is honored to have been trusted to hold your hand even as your mind lets go. Snow White through the ages is not a procession of fashions. It is a procession of listeners. One of them is you here now with your eyes growing heavy as the last paragraph lengthens into a path and the path lengthens into a field and the field becomes a sky, soft with stars that have been telling the same story in their slow language for so long that even time has learned to speak more gently. Let the book close. Let the forest keep its watch. Let the castle windows dim to embers. Let the cottage set one more bowl to dry. Let the mirror sleep under its cloth. Let the apple return to the tree. And let your breath be the only sentence the night needs to hear. Chapter 11. Symbols arrive like gentle teachers, not with chalk and rule, but with a hand to steady your breath. White, red, black. The first three threads are simpler than a crown and older than a king. White is the hush that falls after snowfall, when the world remembers its innocence without having to prove it. Red is the pulse that continues whether anyone notices or not, the small drum beneath every sleeve. Black is the deep soil where seeds agree to disappear so that something green can later remember their names. Together, these colors are not decoration. They are a map for courage. Consider white first, because white always arrives first in this tale. It is the window light in winter, the clean page before the ink, the frosting of frost on a sill where a mother leans and wishes. White is not emptiness here. It is readiness. It is the gentle room where goodness prepares itself to meet the world without armor. White says, you are allowed to be new again. White says, you may begin without shame. White is wool washed and hung, a sheet shaken in sunlight, a breath counting itself at the start of sleep. When Snow White moves through a room, white goes ahead like a scout announcing peace. When she lies in crystal, white keeps her company so that rest is not mistaken for ruin. Red follows, warm and honest. Red is story in the bloodstream. Red is the apple's invitation and the heart's answer. Red is the rose that keeps a summer in its pocket long after the calendar insists on something colder. It is not only passion, it is responsibility. Red says, love is not a feeling you store in a drawer. It is a daily practice that keeps roofs from leaking. The ribbon that constricts bears Red's warning. Beware when beauty is asked to tie you smaller than you are. The apple bears Red's lesson. Recognize the difference between sweetness and trust. Snow White's lips keep Red's promise. Even while asleep, a life can hold the full color of its future. Black is the patient keeper of roots. It is the ebony frame around the mirror. It is the night that does not threaten, but shelters. It is the hair that carries the river's shine into a room without needing to speak. Black says, depth is not danger. Depth is where understanding lives. The forest wears black in its shadows so that creatures can pass without fear of being counted. The mine wears black like a workshop apron, stained by good labor. The queen mistakes black for an ally to envy. It is not. It belongs to the truth-telling of earth, not to the hunger of a heart turned inward. Black is the ink that lets memory stand. Black is the sleeve a mourner offers to a friend who needs to cry. Black is the clarity that comes when daylight steps back and stars take their turn telling the story. Now the mirror, a rectangle of absence that answers when called. At first it appears to be an object, pretty and obedient. Then it proves itself a boundary. The mirror divides question from answer. The queen approaches it looking for proof that she cannot keep. Snow White never needs it because she has learned another reflective surface, water. The forest's pool returns a face gently, never brighter than the world around it, never louder than the leaves. To stand before water is to be reminded that identity is movement and rest at once. To stand before the mirror the queen chooses is to learn the price of asking a wall to be a friend. A symbol's lesson is always about the hand that holds it. The mirror says, ask better questions. Ask the world how to serve it. Ask your fear to step aside so that you can hear what does not flatter but can save. The apple is a planet small enough to turn in your palm. It bears weather in its skin, blush, shade, freckle, shine. It keeps seeds like ours. It is ordinary grandeur. The apple's gift is discernment. When it is offered, you may pause long enough to ask, who holds it and why? When it sits in a bowl in the cottage, it means harvest, work, rest, share. When it rides in the basket of a disguised intention, it means pause, look again, trust the voice inside that hums the pitch of safety. Even when harm arrives through it, the apple does not become evil, it becomes instruction. Time disarms it. Vigil unwinds it. Love outweighs it. Later, apples will return to the table, and the knife will sound like kindness against the board, and the lesson will sit nearby like an elder who smiles and does not interrupt. The forest gathers the symbols and gives them air. It is the library without shelves. It is the chapel without walls. It is the school where every lesson is taught with patient weather. Doorways are thresholds, and the forest is a corridor of them. Light through branches teaches how to accept blessing without burning. Shade teaches how to think without shrinking. Moss teaches softness that can also hold weight. Stones teach how to stay and how to rest without apology. Streams teach persistence that never bruises. Paths teach that many feet make a way where none seemed possible. In this tale, the forest is not a trial to be passed. It is a teacher to be thanked. When Snow White enters, she is not punished by it. She is welcomed. When the huntsman lowers his knife, the forest receives the surrender as if it were a seed tossed into good ground. The cottage is the forest footnote spelled in broom and bowl and bed. It turns symbol into supper. It translates myth into habit. A table is not merely wood, it is where hunger becomes community. A broom is not merely a stick. It is how a floor is reminded to feel like a safe place for bare feet. Soap is not merely a block. It is a promise that work can end in comfort. 7 beds are not a joke. They are a residency for rest. The cottage says heroism is dishwater and laughter and boots set by the door in a line that means we will try again tomorrow. The dwarfs are keepers of the cottage's language, and Snow White learns it by doing, not by decree. In a world that often confuses luxury with goodness, the cottage keeps goodness plain and reachable. Crystal appears where the forest and cottage meet purpose. It is transparency made strong. It is the decision to hide nothing. It is the refusal to rush what must happen slow. Crystal is not chosen for display. It is chosen for honesty. It says to every passerby, here is our love, here is our grief, here is our patience. You may walk with us a little while. When the prince arrives, Crystal allows him to see the truth without story or spin. When the seasons turn, Crystal catches them and teaches the dwarfs how to let time pass without letting hope pass. When waking comes, Crystal does not shatter. It is simply set aside, its work complete. Symbols that serve love are never jealous of endings. 7 is a rhythm as much as a number. 7 days hold a week. 7 notes hold a scale. 7 figures hold a cottage together without needing a sermon. In this tale, 7 is sufficiency without excess. It is enough shoulders to carry a vigil without breaking anyone. It is enough voices to turn a silence into music when needed, and to keep quiet when quiet is the medicine. It is enough hands to build and mend, to guide and guard, to lift and lay down. When Snow White arrives, 7 becomes 8, and 8 means abundance. Not abundance of coins, but of care. The symbolism of number here is not mystic arithmetic. It is the accounting of neighborliness. 3, too, keeps time. 3 visits mark the queen's persistence and the world's warning. 3 sleeps, nightly rest, the deep pause in crystal, the gentle, common nap that returns at noon when the body needs reminding it is loved, thread the story with a humane cadence. We learn by repetition. We are saved by repetition. Sweep, set, sing, work, wash, rest, knock, caution, kindness. The tale knows our attention is a small animal. It does not scold. It repeats. Even thresholds are symbols here. A door frame is a hinge between fear and refuge. A gate is where the law of a castle meets the law of a field. The border between field and forest is where rules learn respect and dogma learns to listen. Every time Snow White crosses a line, she teaches the line how to be kinder. Every time the huntsman crosses back into the court, he carries the forest correction in his bones. Every time the dwarfs carry their lunch pails across the sill, they remind the cottage that work leaving will soon be work returning, and the house is pleased. Symbols gather more work to do as the story travels through history. The mirror becomes a device in a pocket. The apple becomes a feed we scroll. The forest becomes the silent hour we owe ourselves. The cottage becomes our morning routine, the clean counter where we decide not to hurry cruelty into anyone's day. Crystal becomes the courage to be clear about our grief. 7 becomes the group text where kindness is planned. 3 becomes the rule we keep. Breathe in, breathe out, notice. The tale allows this translation because it was never a closed box. It was always a lantern passed hand to hand. If you listen closely, you can hear one symbol beneath them all. Breath. The story breathes. The forest breathes. The cottage breathes. The mind breathes. The vigil breathes. The waking breathes. Your room breathes now in a small exchange of warmth between lamp and wall, pillow and cheek, sentence and silence. White for the inhale, red for the steady carry, black for the restful keep. The colors are not on a dress, they're in your chest. This chapter could name 1,000 more. Comb and ribbon, belt and boot, spade and lamp, ladder and rail, bird and bell. Each holds its lesson. But the lessons are not tests to pass. They are comforts to keep. The comb teaches how intimacy can be kindness or control. The ribbon teaches how beauty can be celebration or constriction. The belt teaches how strength can be armor or embrace. The boot teaches how travel can be escape or pilgrimage. The spade teaches how digging can be greed or garden. The lamp teaches how light can pry or welcome. The ladder teaches how ambition can be theft or service. The rail teaches how guidance can be a yoke or a handrail. The bird teaches how messages can be gossip or blessing. The bell teaches how attention can be alarm or invitation. And because this is a bedtime book of symbols, we let them all set themselves down on a quiet shelf. White folds itself into a sheet. Red warms into a hearth ember. Black draws the curtains so stars can write their small notes across the sky. The mirror sleeps under its velvet. The apple returns to its branch in your mind where it waits for bright, ordinary hunger tomorrow. The forest moves one leaf. The cottage sighs as timber does when the weather changes, and the house remembers every hand that has kept it standing. The crystal keeps the starlight a little longer and then lets it go. 7 settles. 3 counts you kindly to the edge of dreaming and does not insist you jump, only offers you the soft, wide ground. Chapter 12. Every story that passes through a forest leaves a part of its voice behind, and the forest keeps those voices the way a choir holds notes inside the rafters for later. If you could wake before dawn and stand where the path bends around the old oak and listen without wanting anything, you would hear them, the whispers, woven from feather and fur, from bark and stream, from root talk and wind talk, from the simple grammar of creatures that have kept this world turning without needing to be asked. First, the birds. They are the forest's early bells. They lift the day by naming it. Their songs are announcements and instructions and jokes and maps. Long before a crown decided the calendar, the birds decided the hour. When Snow White stepped under the boughs, the birds looked sideways with bright, round eyes, and then sang the scale that tells a shy heart it is welcome. They have guided many through these halls of leaf, and their method is always the same. Move, pause, look back, to be sure the one following still sees you. Move again. In their small bodies, the forest remembers the art of beckoning without dragging. If you feel your thoughts flocking as you try to rest, imagine a bird landing on a twig at the edge of your mind and tilting its head, as if to say, "Here, try this perch instead." The bird is never in a hurry. The bird understands rest as part of flight. Deer write cursive across the understory. Their legs make letters where grass has the patience to learn a script and keep it. Deer step as if proofreading the ground, gentle corrections of pace with every hoof. They are guardians not by force, but by presence. Fear flees them not because they are fierce, but because they do not harm what does not harm. When the huntsman lowered his knife, a deer would have lifted its head somewhere, sensing the atmosphere of harm releasing, and then would have lowered its head again to eat, unafraid, as if to say, "Good. That is the way." When Snow White slept in glass, deer took turns keeping the perimeter not with threat, but with attention. They stood, ears like questions, eyes like dawns, confirming again and again that safety is often a matter of someone simply remaining. Rabbits keep the secret laughter of the ground. They run on errands no one assigns and complete them with a vigor that turns a field into a celebration. If courage is sometimes the size of a teacup, rabbits are masters of it. They do not deny their nervousness. They arrange it into wisdom. Their comfort is contagious. When Snow White first found the cottage, a rabbit's small confidence, approaching, pausing, grooming, blinking, translated into a sentence she could understand. This is a place where soft things are allowed. Later, as Vigil stretched the days into a long silk, rabbits kept a calendar of ordinary joy. They chased one another at dusk, as if to remind the clearing that life keeps playing even beneath the heaviest veil of quiet. Foxes are small fires that think. They pass like brief poems through the dim. Their curiosity is the forest intellect given a red coat. They test borders and remember paths no map admits. If a danger arrives, foxes scent it first and file reports in a language of prints and musk and absence. They are not villains in this story. They are editors. When the queen's disguises rustled the edges of leaf and fern, foxes noted the discord, the way a false note sounds in a choir. They could not stop it, but they could carry the knowledge forward, and knowledge, carried far enough by enough small, bright minds, becomes a hedge where harm must at least slow down long enough for help to arrive. Wolves, when they pass, do so like verses from a psalm. The forest does not sing for just anyone. They remind the woods of its wildness without turning it cruel. They are the keepers of order beyond human tidiness, the patrol of balance. In this tale they remain distant, felt more than seen. The way the sea can be felt in the air of a port town, even on a day without waves. Their presence says everything in its measure. Their distance says not all strength needs to become spectacle. In winter, their breath lit like brief lanterns and went out without regret. Their paws sewed long seams across the snow, and the seams held the hills together until thaw. Owls are archivists. They catalog the night. They arrange silence into topics and then listen to those topics until they learn what each is trying to say. If the queen ever wandered into the forest at an hour when she thought it was blind, owls would have been the ones to carry her outline forward, copying her shape into the ledger of memory, not to accuse, to understand. When a prince finally crossed the threshold, owls marked the difference with one line in their invisible book. Reverence present. It is enough. They are not dramatic. They are accurate. Accuracy is a kind of kindness, too. The stream is the forest's long sentence. It says everything and never repeats itself, even when to your ear it seems to be saying the same soothing syllable all day. Water remembers without hoarding. It takes the footprints of deer and the ships of leaves and the whispers of children and makes of them a music that keeps secrets by transforming them. Snow White hears this language, and it calms the parts of her that never wanted a throne, only a world where thrones remembered where bread comes from. The stream carried news to the roots during the long vigil. Still here, still loved, still clear, still cold, still moving. The roots carried the news to the trunk to the branches to the birds to the morning. Trees converse in a tempo that humbles impatience. Through the mycelium web beneath your feet, the forest's soft, always awake post office, they send sugars and warnings and generosity. Saplings are tucked beneath the wings of giants. Wounded trunks are fed by neighbors who shrink their own rings for a season. An abundance of rain is translated into sweetness for later. The forest is not a democracy or a monarchy. It is covenant. Snow White's arrival reads to the trees as a signature, renewing the agreement. We will keep you. You will keep us. When the queen pretends to be other than she is, the trees feel the lie as a draft and hold their leaves a little tighter, not out of meanness, but to think longer before they let them fall. Moss is the floor's lullaby. It thickens in places where feet have learned to lift a little higher, reminding the path of softness even as it bears weight. Lichens are the old painters who never retired. They lift cups to the air and drink light. They write quiet frescoes on stone that last longer than winning ever does. Fungi appear overnight like sudden ideas and then disappear like mercy withholding the memory of harm. Squirrels filigree branches with their quick cursive, turning acorns into spring before winter has even learned their names. Jays scold, because even paradise needs opinionated aunties. Woodpeckers keep time. Finches decorate silence. Badgers enforce naps. Toads supervise puddles. Each creature, minor to a crown, major to a forest, continues. When the crystal coffin was set among the flowers, the forest rephrased itself to include it, not as an intrusion, as a new stanza. The clearing held a note. The note collected harmonies. Some days the music was almost nothing, the kind of song you can hear only if you have promised not to force it. Some nights the music was loud enough for clouds to adjust their edges. Wild geese felt it in their collarbones as they crossed and discussed it in committee until the moon approved their minutes and filed them in the lake. Constancy attracts witnesses. Witnesses attract tenderness. Tenderness draws courage. Courage reduces the appetite of fear. Fear, hungry, leaves. From the animal's point of view, the court is a rumor and a weather front. It changes the quality of noise more than the shape of land. When Snow White returned to the castle, the forest did not lose her. It gained a translator. A woman who understood how leaf light teaches stewardship walked halls that had forgotten the sky. She carried in her hair the shine of rivers. She used her red for resolve and her white for welcome and her black for depth. She spoke to cooks, not as labor, but as artists who keep citizens alive. She stood on balconies and learned the names of the swifts who nested under their lip. She ordered plantings by the window so that children could watch bees and grow unafraid of what crawls and hums. The forest approved because approval in a forest is simply the absence of alarm. Seasons continue their wheel. Spring walks barefoot and whistles. Summer drowses but does not sleep. Autumn writes letters in cursive leaves and signs them with wind. Winter lowers its voice and expects everyone else to do the same. In every season, the forest keeps its promise to whisper. The whisper is not a secret. It is not instructions you must fetch and carry to a throne. It is simply the reassurance the world offers if you meet it without a knife in your hand. You are held, it says. You can learn, it says. You are allowed to rest, it says. You can begin again. Now listen as the animals narrate in their way the lessons humans put in books. The robin says, "Build with whatever is near. Beauty will follow usefulness." The wren says, "Sing because singing makes the work lighter, not because an audience is owed a show." The hare says, "Run when you must, freeze when you should, eat when there is food, and forgive yourself for trembling." The stag says, "Carry the weight with honor, and then put it down where the grass is soft." The bear says, "There are seasons for everything. Let the body have them." The bee says, "Bring sweetness home and share it. Sting only when absolutely necessary. You will know if it is." The ant says, "One crumb at a time is how cathedrals happen." The heron says, "Stand still until the world draws near enough to be understood." The swallow says, "Return, return, return," and every return reweaves the sky. Once during the vigil, a windstorm slid its palm across the canopy, and the forest bowed together. The coffin did not move because 8 hands had secured it, with a care no rope could equal. After the winds left, the clearing smelled like pine tea and clean slate. A fox trotted through, checked the perimeter, and left a note in the only handwriting it has. A jay shouted that the hazard was over, as if ending a meeting no one had wished to attend. Rabbits resumed their eternal errands. Deer wrote reassurance in their script. Owls stamped the night with a seal. Somewhere, a seed decided the moment was right and opened. Somewhere else, a grief remembered that it was allowed to be joy when it wanted and turned its face toward morning. The forest keeps Snow White's story present tense by refusing to let it calcify into artifact. Children still find feathers and are told that a bird left a bookmark where the day needed to be saved. Lovers still pause at streams and wash the heat from their faces, and learn, without speaking, that time can be gentle, even when it is short. Elders still lean against trunks and listen to the slow speech of rings. A stranger still arrives sometimes at dusk with a basket that glows like a small red moon, and the forest, quick as thought, runs a check across its nerves. If kindness carries the basket, the path opens wider. If hunger for power carries it, the briars stiffen politely and the air becomes difficult to breathe. It is not magic in the sense of spectacle. It is the magic of a world that knows itself and chooses to survive by teaching gentleness as a survival skill. In the last light, when your room becomes a small clearing and your breath the stream that keeps it, the forest is near. The whispers that have accompanied this tale, bird and leaf, fir and rain, are not departing. They are settling. They place themselves around your bed the way dwarves once placed bowls and blankets around a table for a guest. A wren perches on the bedpost of your thoughts and decides nothing is urgent. A deer stands at the edge of your attention and flicks one ear as if receiving a nicer weather reports. A rabbit tests the shadow under your chair and declares it safe. A fox writes a single, clever, comforting line across your forehead. Rest now. An owl files its hour under necessary. The stream moves through the house without getting anything wet, because the stream is now only a sound, and the sound is only a permission. You are inside the covenant. That is the forest's last whisper for tonight. The covenant is older than kings, and kinder than rules, and steadier than fear. It says, give and receive and go on. It says, be small without being ashamed. Be strong without needing to be seen. It says, make the bed and sweep the floor, and share the bread, and keep the watch, and welcome the dawn, and let the dusk close without argument. It says, learn the symbols until they live in you, and then you will not need to consult them. You will have become them. White in your inhale, red in your steady carry, black in the deep keep of your sleep. The creatures close their book. The night folds its wing. The path out of the chapter is simply the space between this sentence and the next breath. Take it gently. The forest will keep its watch. The cottage will keep its lamp. The castle will keep its windows. The crystal will keep its memory. The mirror will keep its velvet. The apple will keep its tree. And you will keep your rest and be kept by it until morning remembers your name and the birds ring the first bell. Chapter 13. Night draws a soft circle around every story, and within that circle a single candle waits to be lit. I lift the flame in my mind and touch it to the wick beside Snow White first, because her story opened our path. The candle answers with a small, steady glow. Its light is not loud, it is honest. It settles on her hands, which still remember the measure of flour and the curve of a wooden spoon, and it moves along her hair like river light finding a bank. It rests on her face the way a leaf rests on water without a ripple. Around her, the room is the same room it has always been when a good day finally ends. A chair pulled close to the window, a folded blanket breathing its clean scent. The hush of floorboards easing their shoulders. The flame says what a candle always says when it is doing its job well. You are safe. You are home. The dark is welcome here because it has been taught to be kind. Now I lift the flame and carry it past the sill, out into the hall where old portraits keep their gentle watch. A second wick waits for Cinderella somewhere between a kitchen and a ballroom, because she belongs to both. The candle blooms and finds her by the window where steam curls from a cup, and glass slippers do not matter. It touches the shine on a scrub table, turns it into a small river, and shows how love for a place can be the spell that allows it to love you back. It remembers the shape of her steps long before music knew their names, and it promises that midnight is not a threat in a house that understands rest. The flame goes on, unhurried. A third wick waits near a spinning wheel where thorns remember, having tried to replace time with silence. Aurora breathes quietly. The candle stays small so the sleep around her does not hide. It is a companion, not a cure. It lays itself across a bouquet on the bedside and tells every petal that waking does not need to be loud. It reminds the long-ago thorns that story and sleep can be friends when no one is asking them to fight. The corridor opens into salt air. A fourth wick stands in a shell-colored holder. Ariel's room is as simple as a tide pool, a comb on a ledge, a ribbon coiled like a tide line, a map drawn in the corner of a page and smudged by curious fingers. The candle brightens and a wave answers with a softer edge. The sea sings its endless round sentence. The flame agrees by keeping still. In this gentle truce, the world above and the world below become the same safe water. Across the way, a fifth wick waits in a kitchen where a pot keeps its promise to feed more people than it seems it could. Tiana's night keeps working, quietly, the way kindness does. The candle lifts steam like a prayer that knows it is already heard. It turns the brass handle of the stove into sunrise and every bowl on the shelf into a planet waiting for orbits. It honors calloused hands and a spine that has learned how to bend without breaking. It does not ask the day to end before the last dish is rinsed. It simply keeps the room warm while it does. In a library where spines remember every palm that touched them with awe, a sixth wick is set beside a closed book. Belle sleeps with a page pressed to her heart, not because she could not finish, but because the sentence chose to keep her until morning. The candle accepts the partnership. It leans toward a margin where someone once underlined a line that mattered. It shines across a desk, scratched by study and patience. It reveals dust in the air and does not scold it. Dust is the library's quiet weather. The candle is the sun that does not hurry it away. A seventh wick stands in a room with a carpet that still remembers flying. Jasmine's window is open just enough to let the city breathe with her. The candle is a lantern in a market stall after closing, counting the day not in coins but in faces. It does not chase the night away. It invites the night to come in and sit. In its small circle, palaces and alleys are equal. Comfort is a cup poured for whoever is near. In a chamber where a sword finally rests, an eighth wick waits near polished wood and folded cloth. Mulan's armor sleeps too. The candle does not flare. It bows. It sends light into the smallest stitch and follows it through the seam to show how care keeps courage from unraveling. It finds a letter from a parent and makes the ink shine like water. It turns the floor into a quiet field and the rafters into mountains that have learned to lean toward each other for shelter. A ninth wick burns where a river bends. Pocahontas listens to everything in the room because even silence has stories when you are practiced at hearing them. The candle allows the colors to rest. It does not steal green from leaf or blue from water. It takes what the dusk gives and multiplies it gently. It moves along the grain of the table and shows how time writes its history in wood. It makes space at the center for breath to be the main event. Under a tower roof that once taught stars the meaning of patience, a 10th wick belongs to Rapunzel. The candle becomes a friend to paint. It lifts the faces in the mural and lets them keep their kindness. It softens the ladder she drew into the sky and sets one on the gentle angle that dreams prefer. It knows hair is just hair now, a thread among many, and it finds the shorter strand shining with a freedom that does not require a window to be open. The candle is not a guard. It is a companion for hands that keep making. On a cold stone sill washed by sea wind, an 11th wick finds Merida's bow resting like a question that has already been answered. The candle stands close without crowding. It acknowledges how a day can be a storm even when no rain fell. It moves along the curve of the bow and honors the hand that holds when holding is needed, and lets go when letting go is wiser. It shines into the hollow of the quiver and sees only room. It leaves it that way. Far out on the water, where a canoe rocks with the patience of someone who knows the horizon is not a line but a place, a 12th wick lives in a small glass that never spills. Moana sleeps with the ocean speaking in her bones as it always has. The candle keeps pace with the stars she learned to read. It touches the sail without taking its wind. It marks the difference between fear and respect, and leans toward the latter with quiet joy. It accepts that some homes have no walls and recognizes the roof in a sky that wants you to find your way. In a palace where winter learned the shape of love and then loosened its grip, a 13th and a 14th wick wait near two beds that know each other's weight. Elsa's candle is a study in restraint. It finds frost where it still likes to lace the edge of a pane and lets it stay. It teaches the ice how to glow without needing to grow. Anna's candle is a campfire distilled. It makes blankets smell like courage. It holds doorways open. It keeps watch for anyone who has not arrived yet, and holds a plate in reserve without asking if it will be needed. Together the two flames meet in the quiet middle and make one warmth. We could keep going. We do, but slowly. A candle for a warrior who learned that the real battle is often with an old story we accidentally obey. A candle for a dreamer who learned that the dream was already here when she stopped running. A candle for anyone who has ever cleaned a room and in cleaning it, helped the room clean them back. The flame does not measure worth by crowns. It measures by breath. If you are breathing, it says, you are invited. Now the path returns to Snow White again because this has always been her circle. The candle beside her is steady. It has burned through drafts and laughter and soft conversations in the doorway. It knows the names of the floorboards and the reasons the window latches stick, and the time the kettle sings when no one is touching it. It remembers the cottage and honors the castle, and keeps the forest on its list of favorite chapels. It is the size of a promise kept. The candles together make a map, not a map for finding treasure, because the treasure is the act of carrying light. A map for remembering the way your own room becomes safe when you allow it to be small. A map for tracing, without hurry, how stories touch, how friendship travels, how kindness keeps its shape even when the room changes. Look from candle to candle. See how each one is enough for its room. See how none of them tries to light a country. See how together they make the night gentle. I blow nothing out. The night handles that. It knows when the candles have done their work and when the wick deserves its sleep. They will go dim like stars at dawn, one by one, without apology. Before they do, I leave one more near your bed. It is not large. It is exactly the size of your next breath. It will burn as long as you need it, and not a moment longer. And in that economy is a kindness the world loves to practice when we let it. Outro. The room grows quiet, the way a field learns dew, slowly and then all at once. Your pillow keeps the shape of your head the way a good story keeps the shape of your attention without demanding it. Your blankets agree to be a shoreline where waking and sleeping can trade secrets and forget to keep score. The window is a square of night that does not need to be filled. You are not late to anything. You are not missing anything. You are here, and here is plenty. Let the tales soften into background, like crickets deciding the air has earned its music. The forest steps back without leaving. The castle closes its windows but keeps a candle in a stairwell for whoever needs to climb carefully. The cottage sets one more bowl to dry and leaves the towel out because someone might be thirsty later. The crystal keeps no one now. It keeps the memory that waiting is sometimes the holiest labor. The mirror sleeps under its cloth, and for once it does not dream of faces. The apple hangs again on its branch in the orchard of your chest, ordinary and perfect and patient, promising sweetness at the hour you are hungry for it. Breathe. Count if you like, or do not. Let the breath be white in the mind, a simple readiness. Let the beat in your wrist be red, an honest carry. Let the dark behind your eyes be black, a deep keep. This is the alphabet the tale taught us, and it is the alphabet your body already knew. Inhale until your shoulders forget to worry. Exhale until the bed remembers its job. Inhale the quiet. Exhale the day. Keep going. The night is not measuring you. It is welcoming you. If thoughts arrive like small animals, let them. A wren finds the headboard and tidies a worry into something that can be left for the morning. A rabbit inspects the underbed and reports back that all is well. A fox writes a clever line across the floor and slips away before you can try to remember it. An owl files this hour under necessary rest. A deer stands in the doorway of your attention, watches the room settle, and moves on with untroubled grace. You are inside the covenant the forest keeps. Give and receive and go on. Tonight you receive. The giving can wait until sunlight touches the edge of the window and the birds decide the hour again. Your work is rest. Your courage is rest. Your kindness begins with rest. Even queens must sleep. Even minors must sleep. Even stories must sleep. Especially stories, because sleep is how they grow rings. You can come back to this path any night you like. It will not wear out. The footprints are yours already, and each return will make them kinder to your feet. The candles know their places. The rooms remember the way you move through them without knocking anything over. The stream keeps speaking in a language made of yes. The mirror is still under its cloth, and in the morning, if you must uncover it, it will show you the face of a person who learned again how to begin. If you wake in the dark later, do not be afraid of the extra hour. It is a gift the night left on your table. Pour it slowly and drink it warm. If you sleep straight through and rise only when light has finally finished its long journey across the air to tap your curtain, smile if you can, and if you cannot, do not scold your mouth for its honesty. Wash your face like a stream would, patient, cool, thorough. Set one small task in front of yourself and do it like the cottage taught you. Light a real candle if you want, or light one in your mind. Either way, carry it into the first room you enter and let it do what candles do best. Thank you for walking here. Thank you for listening in the way that makes a story feel less alone. Thank you for letting the symbols settle in your breath and not in your thoughts. Thank you for allowing the old lessons to become new comforts. If you would like more nights like this, you already know the path. It begins wherever you are and leads toward the quiet center where a bed waits and a voice is ready to speak softly, and then quieter still until your own breathing is the only voice left. Now let the last small lights go where they go when they are finished. Let the sentence slow until there's only a word, and then let the word loosen and drift. Let the room hold you. Let the night keep watch. Let sleep arrive as it always does when invited without pressure. You are safe. You are home. You are loved. And the dream begins.